Hey, this is Kris with ROI Asset and Property Management. And today we're going to talk about real estate investing, how to start, and some of the things you can do while you're doing it. So 5 years ago, a friend of mine asked me to do some real estate investing with him. And I told him, no, I was risk adverse. I wasn't prepared to commit to the lifestyle change that was involved in real estate investing. He finally got me to do it 3 years ago, and it's been off to the races ever since. Our first real estate investment was a triplex in Twin Falls, Idaho. We paid $126,000 for it using a HELOC. I took a HELOC out on my home, and we put $40,000 into it. And as we went through that process, 2 of the units became available and thus re-rented. So we rehabbed the first one, rented it, rehabbed the second one, rented it. And funny story, the third one has been inhabited this entire time, and we still have yet to go in and do a full rehab on it. Obviously, we've got in there and said, what can we do to fix it? But anyway, so we got this triplex. We got it for a steal of a deal back then. And that was my first nugget of real estate investing. We were about halfway through, and I wanted more. So I said, hey, let's do another one. The next one was a little single family unit that we bought for $97,000. And we put like a small amount, like $10,000 into it. A year later, we sold it for $160,000. It was our introduction in both the BRRRR method and the flipping business. And since then, we've flipped dozens of homes. We've BRRR'd 6, I believe. And subsequently, we moved into multifamily apartment complexes. So once again, this business partner, we were sitting on the number 2 green talking about, hey, we're doing all this work burning. We're doing all this work flipping. Why don't we start talking about multifamily? And by the way, we have this whole mentor program called Jake and Gino that you can join, and they'll teach you how to do this. And he told me the price, and I had never spent that kind of money on any training whatsoever. So I balked. I was like, why would we do that? And he goes, seriously, one mistake that we make buying the wrong property will cost us 5 times that. And I told him that day, let's do it. And I've been part of that organization for over a year, directly involved in multifamily property. Our first deal was for anything larger than a 5 or a 6 unit was last September. We got into an 18 unit. And that involves quite a bit of work just to get there, because you have to find the deal. It has to be the right deal. Then you have to find funding for that deal. You have to close. And then you have to manage it, whether it's asset management, which we'll talk about, finding the right property management, which we'll talk about, making sure you have the right funding for that project, making sure you can, if the roofs need done, get the roof done. If it needs painted, get it painted, rehab the units. And then the process of, as tenants move out, getting the right tenants back in, or if the right tenant is there, transitioning them to that new unit, whether long-term or temporary, and rehabbing that unit that they're in. So there's a whole conversation there that we have, and multiple talking points there. First and foremost, finding the deal. As Bill Ham would say, he doesn't teach you how to buy real estate. He teaches you how to not buy real estate, and that no deal is better than a bad deal. So the Jake and Gino program has a buy rate camp that you can go to, and they literally teach you how to look at the property, how to underwrite the property, and how to eventually find creative ways to purchase that property. In this case, this deal in September, it was an owner carry. It was 5% down, 25-year amortization, and we needed to come up with both the down payment, which was 20%, and the rehab, which was, I'd like to say, $150,000 to $200,000 for these 2 complexes, 113, 1.5, to make a total of 18 units. My experience on that, I was a brand new asset manager, but past experience as an asset manager, you do vendor management, you do people management, and you do property management in a sense. So we found the right property manager. I basically treated her like she was an employee, even though she's a really good friend of mine. So sorry, Veronica. And dealt with vendors once again, and managed that property and helped kind of uplift that property as we go. We've been in that unit 9 months as an asset manager, and it is outperforming even our expectations, which is fantastic. Once again, asset management portion of the property management portion of it. What our property manager's job was to make sure we get the correct tenants in there. And by that, it means, making sure that they're not a violent criminal or a sex offender, which in this case, no. Making sure they can afford to move into something like that, because you don't want someone that can not afford to move in a place because they're probably not going to pay the bill. And making sure they understand what we're trying to do. And it's not that we're looking for tenants that are below poverty, because we're happy to use Idaho housing, and we have 3 Idaho housing individuals that stay at our apartment complex. It was about making sure that they were the right fit, that they weren't going to tear up the property, because that's not good for our investment if we're going to go in and spend several thousands of dollars rehabbing a property for them to ruin it. Making sure they have a good rental history, and once again, making sure they're not violent criminals that are going to make an impact on the community or the individual tenants that are there. We want everyone to be secure and happy. Another project that we added on there is a value add. We added free wireless so that the tenants could use that wireless instead of having to pay for their own internet. We also put in cameras that worked off that wireless. So we kind of 2 birds, 1 stone. We have the wireless for the cameras, we have the wireless for the tenants. And because of those locations, it's value add for the tenant, because they don't have to necessarily pay for internet anymore if they don't want to. So we uplift these properties. Obviously, yes, that does mean a rental increase. However, we try and offset it by adding those value adds like internet, like making sure the property is actually taken care of now by repainting it, adding a roof, making sure there's not leaks. If their unit needs to be turned and rehabbed, we do that. We ask them, what can we do to make your life a little bit easier, et cetera. Asset management, once again, it's an individual that manages property managers, vendors, et cetera. You do that for the investors. You basically go in there as a project manager and take care of the property for the life of that property. You can be vested either as a partner in the deal, or you can collect a payment every month. Usually it's 1 or 2% to asset manage it, or sometimes even both. So you have skin in the game on that property. So if something goes bad, you're going to take care of it the right way. Another thing an asset manager does is they handle the finances. So when you're going through the underwriting process, they make sure there's enough budget there to go through these CapEx expenditures to take care of the property and uplift it. They take care of the P&Ls month to month and year to year, et cetera. Make sure that the property performs at the level you would expect. And all of our properties perform at market rates. We don't gouge people to try and get more money out of them. We look at what the market rate is, and that's how we get it to perform.
Can you talk to us a little bit about creative ways to invest and getting past your safe zone?
So once again, 3 years ago, I made the decision to get out of my safety zone and put a HELOC on the house and invest with that HELOC, which for me, I was 12 years from paying off my home. I was being really aggressive. I wanted to pay off that house and get out of debt, because that was the American dream, is to have a house free and clear, et cetera. So we took a loan out on the house. We agreed what the terms were for using that money. I had to talk my wife through that, because when she's my rock, she is my partner, and we talk about everything when it comes to finances. And we went and bought a triplex. So creative ways to find money. I've seen people borrow from their HELOC. I've seen people take their HELOC out and invest it, take it out of their normal fund and invest it as though it's a Roth IRA that they can self-drive into a property. I've seen people do fix and flips to get there, where they put in their sweat equity to make money for it. There's quite a number of ways where you can be creative, physical labor, et cetera, to get into one of these deals. And the great thing about these deals isn't even necessarily the money that you put into it. It's the time, energy, and knowledge you get from it. So after you do one of these deals, you learn acquisitions, you learn underwriting, you learn raising money, you learn asset management, property management, vendor management. You learn both what it's like to be a tenant, because you're in there day in and day out, and to be a landlord. And if you're with me, you learn the right way to do it. We want to take care of both our employees, our tenants, our owners, our partners. It's an integrity thing. And integrity is probably the quintessential component of all this, because you're working for yourself, yes, but you're working for other people. You have other people relying on you, but they're staying at that place. If the hot water goes out, they need to get to work. You need to take care of that. the owners are investing their money and their time into this as well as the partners. Integrity is huge, making sure you get done what you're supposed to get done. It all kind of wraps up together on creative ways to find and fund these deals. So if you ever have any questions, we do have a Magic Valley real estate investor group that meets over at Hong Kong every second Thursday. There's a Facebook page for it, but that's going to be your quintessential way to learn a lot about real estate investing, whether it's doing flips, doing BRRRRs, short-term rentals, learning how to finance, learning how to sell. Obviously, you have to real estate license to buy and sell from that aspect, but learning the whole gamut of ways to find creative ways of financing these things.
So can you talk a little bit about the easy things that happened and the hard things that happened that you learned from to make it easier when you transitioned to multifamily?
So a lot of things were hard in the beginning. You have to trust other individuals. When someone asks me for my social security number, I balk. There's no way you're getting that, dude. Not going to happen in this day and age. But when you have good partners and you want them to go get stuff done that you basically divide and conquer, you have to trust those individuals. And sometimes I have a hard time trusting individuals. Fortunately, I have amazing partners too. So we just talked through it and we worked on it. Other things that I find very, very hard was trying to find the time to both manage my W-2 job and manage all of this new stuff that's happening on from a real estate perspective. And at first it wasn't bad. It was, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 hours a week as we progressed through the years. But as we were able to put processes in places, obviously it got more efficient, but then my partner would go buy something else and we would fund it. And I would have a new toy to play with as I was managing these other properties. And so it grew and it grew and it grew to the point where basically had to make a decision. Do I have a W-2 job or do I do real estate investing? And last month was the decision of, hey, I'm not going to look for a W-2 job or have a W-2 job. I'm going to go all in. And so far it's been an amazing opportunity. Some of the easy things. When you find a tenant that wants to talk, I know we always find those talkers. I love engaging with tenants. I love having those conversations and seeing where I can add value to their lives, because the reality is that's your customer and they take care of you if you take care of them. And that's huge. Probably one of the easiest things for me is going and talking to someone because I talk a lot. Other things that are easy, once you start getting into the flow of the process, the question gets asked, are you ready for another deal? Absolutely. Let's hit it head on. How can I help? Other times, especially with some of our newer investors, how do I get into this? Well, hop into one of our deals, even if you can't invest, and let me walk you through the process. You can come to meetings. You can learn kind of what I do. If you have questions, you can ask them. Let's learn together, because I guarantee you will have something that I don't know that I would love to learn to teach you, and vice versa. So let's build that relationship. That was actually a conversation that I was having with a lady and her daughter on a bus, and we were in Knoxville, Tennessee at a Jake and Gino event, and they were in Reno, and they were brand new to the organization. And I'm like, hey, I'm Kris Carney. I'm an asset manager. And they're like, well, we'd like to learn a little bit more about that. But as we got further on into that conversation, they were doing Airbnb and VRBO short-term stuff that I didn't know anything about, but I wanted to get into. So now it's mutually exclusive. We can scratch each other's back and get this done. And so that was an amazing opportunity to have a conversation there. And eventually it led to her joining an accountability pod that we have. So what's an accountability pod? It's exactly like it sounds. You get a group of like-minded individuals on a call, and you talk about your successes, where you failed, and where you're leading to. So we talk about our failures first. Get that out of the way. Where do I need to grow is what we call it, instead of failures, because failures is so negative. Grow is so much better. Where have I succeeded, and where am I headed? Because it's about the destination. And along that ride, there's going to be hiccups, but there's also going to be a lot of fun. So we introduced them to this accountability pod where I have many other individuals that I'm growing with. And we talked about that process. And I tell you, I've learned so much from that accountability pod, both on how to teach people what I'm doing and to learn from them. It's such an amazing experience. I really recommend to anybody that wants to grow as an individual, find a group of like-minded individuals, get into a room, tear your walls down, talk about your weaknesses, talk about your strengths, and have them help build you up. We all have weaknesses, and we can turn those into our strengths. And there's other people that have different weaknesses that you have strengths. Build each other up. That's how you're going to succeed.
Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned these partners a lot. How are you defining roles and helping people grow in those roles and finding the right people for those?
So that's actually a really, really great question and super important. When you put these deals together, you don't just throw random people you like in there. I mean, the reality is if you have 5 people in a deal and 3 people don't have jobs, it's like when you were back in high school and you guys had a school project. Only 2 people got the work done, but you're paying all 5 people for the deal. So find the right partners that are going to perform and make sure you're not covering the same role twice. So you don't need 2 asset managers. You can have someone that wants to learn asset management, but they also need to have another role. You need to find someone that's willing to do the acquisition. You're wanting to find someone that's willing to do the money raise. And in some cases, that's a mutually exclusive position between that individual. Sometimes it's multiple people. The reality is, from the money raising part, that's everyone's job. But there's going to be someone that's usually better at it than other individuals. So you find the right partners for that deal, and you get them together, and they solve problems. And the key part of that is trust. They have to have integrity so that you can trust them to go get that job done. They have to be held accountable. If you call it out and say, hey, what's going on with this? And they drop the ball, don't say, hey, I'm still working on it. Call it what it is. I dropped the ball. I'm going to get right on that right now. Thank you for holding me accountable, because that's really important. But it's finding the right people to join your group. And sometimes it's not the same people every time. That doesn't mean that you don't like one or the other. That just means that this deal over here has these individuals in it, so they only need an asset manager. This deal over here, they just need someone to raise money. So they're going to have someone that's really good at capital raising, et cetera. It's the same thing at home. Me and my wife aren't much alike. She's very much an introvert. I'm an extrovert. She likes to be that. She's very much loves babies. She's always holding a baby whenever I'm around her. Usually not mine, because we're a little bit past that. She loves babies. She loves being at home. She kind of likes that. That's what she loves. I very much like to get out there and talk to people and go to events and whatnot. So she gives me that freedom, and I give her her freedom, and we really have a great relationship. We found the right partner, fortunately for us. And many of my friends know that. I mean, thank God, right? She's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So how are you helping these people once you find the right roles for them to grow into them?
Well, so there's actually 2 parts to that question. A lot of times you'll find individuals that are hungry for knowledge, and they'll grow into a role that fits them. And then they kind of naturally grow into a partnership, whether that's with you or someone else. So I had a group that are in my accountability pod that they ended up going into another deal and being a part of that deal. But they called me and they said, Kris, can you show us or talk to us about asset management and what you do? And I said, absolutely. Let's talk about it in our accountability pod more in depth. And let me show you some of the tools that I use to bring everything together. And so we got together, we had an hour-long phone call, and off to the races. They're joining another partnership and doing what they need to do to obviously be in real estate investing. Other times, once again, I'm going to lean back on the accountability pod. We had a couple that's from Hawaii that are active investors in one of the deals that we're in, and they're friends. Like we built a relationship, and they're pretty amazing individuals. But we got together and we talked about what I do and what my business partner does, and it eventually led into that culmination of that relationship, which the future growth of that was in investing in real estate. And they're some of our partners in one of our deals in Pocatello.
That's awesome. So talk about how this has impacted your family.
Both positively and negatively. So all of the money that we raise from flips, we've been investing. We don't pull money out of that. It's like a snowball. We're rolling it downhill and letting it grow and grow and grow. And eventually, this is going to fund our retirement. So obviously 3 years ago, I didn't think it was going to be this aggressive, which is both a boon and a curse at the same time. But as I grew into this role, it was taking more and more of my time, which meant more and more time away from the family, which definitely isn't a good thing. Once again, why we made the transition to focusing on real estate investing instead of focusing on having 2 jobs. So the positives Um, Personal growth. I get to talk to my kids about things that they're not going to learn in school, like underwriting a deal on a napkin. They're old enough where they know how to do math, especially when it comes to multiplication. So we'll sit there and we'll talk about, hey, this is kind of what daddy does. And we'll talk about a playhouse. So we'll dumb the numbers down a little bit, but they understand what underwriting a deal is. They understand that you have to manage an asset, which means mowing the lawn at home is important, which means if you feed the dog before you go to bed, the dog's not going to come and wake you up because he's hungry. So it's kind of been a developmental tool for the family itself. Plus, it's about investing your time. Where do you invest your time? And that's something where I had to grow because I was less focused on them and more focused on future growth. And I had to recheck that. And it's little things like I came home. It's 8:30 at night. The kids are already in bed. I go up, I give them a kiss on the forehead, etc. To when the kids go to bed, we don't send them to bed and give them loves downstairs in our living room. We now go to their room, tuck them in, and tell them good night. That 30 seconds of investment changes the entire dynamics of the relationship. And you can do that across everywhere. When you're walking an apartment, if there's a tenant there, don't ignore them. Say, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to make your life a little bit easier? What's going on with the property? You'd be surprised what you'll learn. Me and one of the guys that works with us went to a unit here in town. It's a 5-unit. And there was this little old lady just outside of our apartment smoking her cigarette. We went there to check, make sure the weeds were okay, to kind of sweep up a little bit because we had just had a really, really windy day. And we were out there kind of cleaning up the place. And we noticed these little piles of dirt that were just randomly located across the property. And this was a tenant that she's currently looking for, she's currently going through the Idaho housing process. We didn't want to let her go. We like her. Unfortunately, she can't pay market rent, which obviously means as an asset manager, I've got to figure that out. And me and my property manager had talked about her and what we were going to do. And I said, give her another month, let her see what we can go, see if there's programs that can help her because we do like her. It wasn't until that day that I realized how much value add she was for that property. She was sweeping up the property every week after these windstorms. She was getting rid of the limbs. She's getting rid of the dirt. I called up my property manager that day and I said, continue to help her with the program, but give her all the time that she needs. She is value out of that property. She is uplifting that property, and that's exactly what we want from a tenant. So you let her know, no stress, no pressure. We're going to help you wherever we can. Thank you for helping us at the property.
So how would you say that owning your own business and starting this amazing journey has changed your humanity?
I mean, the reality is, I get to sit in my home that I've worked 20 years to get into. Fortunately, I'm sitting, on a fairly nice house. And having been in the position where I lived in an apartment and I'd been in their shoes before, we grew up, we were not rich. We were very poor. We had our favorite dessert, during the Sunday morning was cinnamon and sugar on toast. I lived with my dad till I was 13. He was a single income earner and he had me and my brother to raise all by himself. So it was hard and he worked his butt off. So it's a humbling experience when you can go from being a single parent to taking care of 2 kids that both have at least ADD or ADHD, which are fairly difficult to deal with as I've got 2 kids that are like that myself. And learning how to work your butt off as you go through, whether it's, moving irrigation lines on the farm, flipping burgers, being a server, bartender, etc. Learning how to work and driving that, eventually getting to a point where you're making really good money and you can support your family. I'm fortunate to have a wife that puts up with me and wonderful kids. But then going back and being able to talk to those tenants that they don't make the same money that you do. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be there. And treating them the same as you would treat any other individual walking down the street because they're people too. And to be perfectly honest, I go to our apartment complex on Idaho about weekly and we're on a first name basis. I like those guys. They can talk to me, I can talk to them, and we can talk about the property. I was there last week on our Idaho property and there's this big gray cement wall in the back. And I was like, if we painted that white, would you guys paint on it? Would you guys use it as a value add for the property? Would you, do something classy on that? And one of the individuals who's on Idaho Housing said, absolutely, I would love to do that. Can we do that? And so, obviously took it back to the partners, and we're having conversations about how we can get that done. Once again, it's value add, but it's also an amazing experience between a landlord and a tenant. All right. Well, that's real estate investing and all that comes with that. So this is Kris with ROI Asset and Property Management.